Make sure we're good.
Oh, good.
All right. You're coming. Go ahead and speak for me, Charlie. Making sure we're good on your levels. Okay, you're good.
Yes, sir. How you doing, John?
All right, I'm coming through. I'm doing good, Charlie. How you doing?
Good. Well, doing well.
All right.
I had a busy weekend this weekend. I start this is my first weekend coaching because as a player development, I have some players I also coach. So this was our first weekend back. High school players. So had a good weekend. Lost a tough one at the buzzer. It would have tied the game. It would have been a tie ball game if they called it a 3. They called it a 2. So it was a tough one. But overall, great weekend. So I didn't watch many games. I was in the gym a lot.
Well, that's good to hear. Let's go ahead and let me set some things up real quick. So for the viewers, while we can't get a hold of Jim at the moment, we're hoping he's all right. Hopefully he'll be joining us shortly. But I am Jim's new producer, John Alden, and I'm obviously here with Charlie Miller, who's here with us every Monday. And let's just go ahead and get right into the big news.
Nice.
Mike Woodson is the guy. And you were telling me before the show that you called that last week.
Hey, listen, during Don Fischer's segment, and I said, Coach Mike Woodson, and I'll tell everybody why I felt that. Mm-hmm. With respect to what Don also said, because Don was talking about, he hasn't been around for 30-something years. He's been coaching at the NBA level. Can he relate? Totally understand that. Totally get that. Mm-hmm. Totally respect that. But why I felt Coach Mike Woodson was, one, he was an active former IU player coaching in the NBA. And every player in their humility in a roundabout way wants to play in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Players have questions. And players want those questions answered and solutions, but then also solutions don't just happen overnight, they happen over time. And I feel you need to have the right people in place. I'm not saying Coach Miller was not the right person. This is not a beatdown session. Okay, they moved away from Coach Miller. We all have to move away from it. Next play, next best play. Mm-hmm. But I feel with somebody like Coach Woodson, who has the NBA game for at least 15 to 20 plus years. I mean, you were head coach for 6 years. You were assistant coach for a long time. You also played at that level, and you're a winner in college. All those things balled together. Coach Mike Woodson. That's why I felt he was, to me, not being around, I felt he was the most qualified person aside of a Calvert Chaney. I don't know Calvert's desire. I don't even know Coach Woodson's desire to be a head coach. Mm-hmm. I don't know Calvert's desire to be a head coach. I got to imagine someday probably, right? I know he's coaching for the Pacers right now as an assistant. Mm-hmm. The only other person I also brought up was Keith Smart, right?
And one thing that could be interesting during this tenure for Mike Woodson is that if he ends up working out, I feel like you will see a trend of, and maybe he'll bring in some assistants like Calvert Chaney, Michael Lewis, and they could end up being somebody who could take over for him as Mike Woodson continues to age, because he is an older hire. That is the one thing that I feel like people are skeptical of his age. Yeah, and so I feel like going forward, if he is the solution, if he's at IU for 8-10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if he has former players on his staff with him that they would be the next in line to take over after him.
No, you just nailed it. And something that I want to gloat about. I can gloat about it because listen, we got some phenomenal guys that have gone through the IU system that are coaching all across the world and doing a great job as assistants, as head coaches. And we're not talking all players. We're talking about former managers, right? Mm-hmm. So you have guys with vast experience that's available. I joked with somebody via text who were going to be the assistants. I was like, Calvert Chaney, Dane Fife, Michael Lewis. I'm like, come on, like you can just we can just I'm not saying that's going to be happening, but you can literally just say these words, but these words carry weight and credibility and validity.
Now, do you think that Mike Woodson has the pull being a former player to get Dane Fife out of a situation at Michigan State?
Well, I think I don't know. I can't call it off. I call myself. I think Dan is in line for the head coaching job at Michigan State.
Yeah, and I feel like that's widely accepted.
Well, and then why? Because I look at the trend. When Coach was the head coach at Michigan State, Tom Izzo was in line for the job when Judd Heathcote retired. So I see that dynamic. So I think it'll take a lot to pull. And I'm more than certain Dane probably has entertained a lot of other head coaching jobs. I mean, I can only imagine, again, you're under a legendary coach who learned how to really, I mean, Coach Crean, Coach under Coach Izzo.
Yeah.
He coached, so there's a pedigree, right? So I don't know. You know, so, and even Mike Lewis, right? I mean, would you leave UCLA? I mean, you are part of that tradition.
Tom Ellsbury to pull that.
Yeah, I mean, would you leave UCLA? I mean, to come back, right? I mean, you know, so I definitely see. I mean, and let's give respect to Mike Roberts, right? Mike Roberts is on the staff right now. You know, he was on Archie's staff, right? And you know, so it is interesting to see, you know, what would you do? And you take a situation like Michigan, right? And I want respect. I would not take anything away from what Juwan Howard did. But Juwan Howard had, you know, a former head coach on the staff, you know, that became his assistant coach that probably gave him a lot of guidance, right? And Phil Martelli, right? And now I'm not going to say Phil was the reason he probably won the coach of the year, but I got a good suspicion Phil was the reason he won the coach of the year. Yeah, but that's a tough, tall task coming in and managing like that, right? So so it'll be interesting to see how he's going to fill his staff out.
And one other interesting part that was released is the fact that Thad Matta, former Ohio State head coach, is going to be the associate AD, I think is what his position was. And I think that will be very crucial in seeing how Mike is able to adjust to the college game, being that he's never coached at that level.
Yeah, there you go. And look, I thought about this, and I'm gonna just say it how it came to me yesterday when I was washing dishes. I was washing dishes and thought just hit me. Hey, look, Mike's been dealing with, and I say deal as in the attitude, the mannerisms, Mike has been dealing with 20-something-year-old millionaires. Yeah. For years, right? The ones, let's call it, I don't want to practice. I don't have to. Management knows it. I'm going to show up and play. Gotta swallow your tongue. He's been dealing with that, right? They show up in different cars. They look, you've earned the right for that. Not say everybody's doing that, but everyone is well off that are playing. Now you are dealing with, and I say deal, with 17, 18, 19-year-old want-to-be millionaires who also feel that they're on their way there. They have an expectation. So that's going to be a whole nother paradigm shift on how to help manage the egos and to help them maximize out on their potential. Because what you also got to be careful of is you are a former player who walked those halls.
Yeah.
Part of you, John, I'm telling you, man, you walk in it, you're gonna be like, I'm putting on my practice uniform. I'm back in 76. We're about to run a table.
And he's the first former player coach to let me reword this. He's the first head coach to be a former player since before Bob Knight. And so it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic flows into how he treats whether it's with the players or just the team in general. It's
well, we all tend to deny as we get older. No, Coach, because Coach Knight has a aspiring personality that wears on all of us, man. I know I got some Coach Knight in me, right? I do. I have to work it out because you got to be careful. Coach Knight's Coach Knight. But I think he's denied, if you get where I'm going with that.
Well, I feel like once you've been removed from it long enough and you've grown into other roles, and like he's been in the NBA for as long as he has, it's not the same environment that he played college basketball in.
Yeah, and also practice-wise, right? Because, look, let's face it, in the NBA, there's more games than practice. You're not spending a lot of time. It's a KYP world. And what KYP means is know your personality. Okay. Personnel. It's a KYP world. So it's like, hey, John, you got your film now. Everything's on the iPad. Go do your homework. Go study. Mm-hmm. Hey, look, no practice because we just been traveling. Study. We'll see if we walk through. Like, it's a different world dynamic versus itinerary practice, which is similar but not the same. It's not the same.
All right, just a quick update. Once again, we're still waiting on Jim Coyle. We are live on YouTube. We are not live on the podcast right now because I'm sitting here trying to work all this stuff while I'm waiting to figure out what's going on in the gym.
Hey, and you get a chance to be the head coach today, man. Hey, man. Hey, look, I'm telling you right now, the game is called adjust and adapt.
Yeah, and that's what's going on right now.
And that's all we're
12
talking
minutes
about.
in.
And that's all I'm talking about as a former player watching us play currently is we have to learn to adjust and adapt to play. But also, as I said earlier, I think, you got to have a coach who everyone has a system and everybody's system is predictable. I mean, go to A, go to B, go to C, or we don't have sets, we call it sets and actions. I don't care what you call it. You got 5 spots that's trying to move the ball. And the players that can make plays is what you really want because you got to sometimes break the play to make a play. You just hope someone, again, like Coach Woodson and people on his staff can help develop these guys to see options, right? It just to see options. And
now one of the first things that Coach Woodson's going to have to do is figure out if he's going to be able to get the guys currently in the transfer portal to stay. And do you think, Charlie, that he is going to have the ability to do that with all of the guys, a few of the guys? Do you think people like Trace Jackson-Davis will make the move to stay or just go ahead and jump to the NBA? There's a lot of moving pieces on the current roster that could affect how his first year goes at Indiana.
Well, I tell you what, if I'm Trace now, I got a guy who's been coaching in the NBA. I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like that's probably the number one thing he's looking for right now.
I have a guy who's coached, who can make phone calls, who can tell me exactly what I have to work on, what I have to do daily in practice to build the strong habits if that's what he desires to do to play next level. I have that guy. I have that guy who's coached a lot of great players. I have him. So yeah, there's going to be some convincing, I believe. I saw, the guys that put their names in the transfer portal. And I think also because of the landscape we're in, you can't take it personal because that's the right that the players have. I mean, so you have to learn to work around that. So it's not like, okay, shame on you, or why would you do that? Hey, look, I totally get it. Not knowing who's coming in. But now look who's here, and they may not know Coach Woodson from anything other than just what they've heard from him, right? but I'm hoping that they get some type of excitement and knowing he's a former player, that's won and that has coached at the higher levels that can really help and support their dreams.
All right, now we're joined by Jim Reamer. We've been with myself, producer John Alden, waiting on Jim Coyle to join us. Charlie has been talking with me about the Mike Woodson hire, and now Jim Reamer's joining us. Jim, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Charlie, your Trace, the comments you made about the transfer portal. I'm not a fan of the transfer market being as big as it is, but I agree with you 100%. If it's there, especially in a coaching change, I think you need to open yourself up because it's a formality that allows you to have communication with other people, even if it's just your parents talking to somebody. I mean, there's just a lot more flexibility. And the trace thing, I got in certainly mid discussion on that. If you just tell me if you agree with this or not, more and more, especially if you're looking at entering the NBA as change your life type situation. Mm-hmm. Now Trace comes from a family that doesn't struggle for money, so it's not like he's ever going to make a decision based on money or I hate to use the word desperation. I don't. That's right. But more and more. You really, if you want change your life money, if you want to change your life career from the NBA perspective, I think you have to worry as much about your floor as you do about your ceiling. Do you agree with that? I mean,
no, yeah, but as you know,
yes, no,
you're nodding. No, I do. I agree. But I do
funny because you were nodding your head and you go,
no. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I agree. But as you know, a lot of times people project on the ceiling.
Oh, absolutely. Oh no, I think almost anybody in the lottery for sure.
And remember, we said this almost, if not every show, every other show, guys are watching social media. Mm-hmm. People are talking about projections. People are in your ear. Hey man, right now you might be 15, top 20. Hey, that's 3-year guarantee. Hey, that's this. So I'm not saying that's happening, but I think that's where you get caught up at.
Oh, I agree with that.
Especially when, and it's so passive aggressive. I'm sorry, man. Yeah, I'm going to put my name in the portal. That does not mean I'm leaving. It's almost like a template. Is there a template on Google?
Well, everybody should have a good PR guy.
Oh, right.
And I mean, I've written a couple of things for players I've written a couple of things for players that.
Oh, so he's doing homework over here, John. He's doing homework over here. He's doing everybody's homework. So I didn't know that. So I see now. Well, I get it.
Because it's social media.
And we may have mentioned this earlier, or Charlie, you may have mentioned it about the transfer portal, but with the fact that it's kind of going to turn into an NBA free agency type of market, do you think that – I feel like that would obviously play into an advantage into Mike Woodson's hand?
Well, yeah, I mean, because now I think you have the words that you can walk the talk. Documentation is going to be conversation. Hey, I can get you ready for the NBA. Hey, I've been an NBA. I've coached for 6 years. You're not ready to go. You need to come here. Let me prepare you. I'm not saying it's going to be that simple, right? I'm not saying that, but there could be a direct talk that someone like him has earlier on than somebody else. And again, what does that mean? I mean, so now, just like IU faithful, I love our people. Man, we're only getting people staying for 1 or 2 years and they're leaving.
Yeah. And especially because now we are definitely, I feel like, moving out of the era of the one and done, as you've seen teams like Kentucky, Duke, who are missing the tournament, Kansas, they aren't as good as they have been. So we're officially moving into something that for the past 10, 12 years, it's going to look totally different. Player development is going to matter in the college game way more than it has.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing a lack of. I think just my take. I think we're seeing the lack of, and I think it's going to turn back around to that.
The G League will carve some of that away, and that's it'll take. I think once it gets going, it might take 10 or 11 guys in a class, perhaps, maybe not even that many. And what you'll have on, what you'll have is you'll have the Dukes and the blue bloods will be competing for the next tier of guy that doesn't go to the G League, and you'll be in a situation where those guys, because of what Charlie said about ceiling, may not be as projected as high as what some of these G League guys are. So they might stay an extra year.
Right. But I go back to develop guys like OG Anunoby, who was a 2-star back under Tom Crean, or Victor Oladipo, who I think was only a 3-star. That stuff, those players can become NBA players with the right coach giving them the development that they need.
Well, and you look too at, I mean, OG was a guy that we played him in the summer before he committed to Indiana, and he had 2 points and 1 rebound against us. Now we had a power forward that went to Indiana State at that position, and maybe it was a bad game, but it was the kid that went to Texas Christian from Memphis.
I wish I could help you out on that one.
Yeah, Jalen. I can't remember his name. He graduated 2016. He was their best player that day, and then they had a shooter that went to Vanderbilt. So that was a good group. OG had a bad game, maybe, I don't know. So I didn't know him when he committed, but obviously he's something different than what he was that day. And no, but I think the idea that the G League will change some of this development track on some of these kids. But I go back to what I was saying at the beginning was,
right,
if you want a prolonged NBA career, that to me means you're getting that second guaranteed contract, and you're not doing the year-to-year thing like some now being a year making the league minimum or making the veterans minimum. That's more money than a vast majority of people make in a given year. So it's not like it's a bad life, but you just look at all these guys that have had financial troubles after they've retired from it's rarely the guy that had the prolonged,
right,
the prolonged prolific NBA career. It's the guy that played 6-7 years, maybe didn't sign big contracts after their first contract. And that's the guy that you don't want kids like Trace to become. You want him to be the guy that, you want him to be the guy that has a role in the NBA within a year and a half of his existence in the NBA, because those guys are paying him money to develop. And if he's not ready, if he doesn't have the floor, he ends up being ends up not even being in the rotation. And then what?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
And all that is to say, as an IU fan, I want Trace to stay.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that's a conversation all these kids, any of these kids need to have, not just Indiana kids, and certainly not just Trace. So
right.
Now, one thing we have coming up, or we're supposed to have coming up, well, obviously we're doing the show a little bit differently today without Jim so far. Once again, hope he's doing all right. Hopefully we hear from him soon. But the press conference with Scott Dolson and Mike Woodson starts in a little bit, about 15 minutes. We're going to try to find a way to pull that into this stream so we can show everybody what's going on and see our brand new head coach. And what are you all looking forward to hearing from Mike and Scott here in the next few minutes?
For me,
I don't. Just the recruiting.
Yeah, that blueprint for me. I mean, and again, I think we all know Coach Woodson has not been around the college game, so I don't really have much to expect from him to hear from, more so than probably his plan, his vision. He's going to share. I think. One of the things I also said, and Jim, I said this last week prior to you getting on the call, I called Coach Woodson as the head coach.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you did? Okay. Nice.
I called him because I talked about criteria. And I was like, I got to believe that Scott Dolson talked to the players and asked a couple weeks ago, hey, what would you want to see in a head coach, right? And I just feel he checked all the boxes. It was, again, just like throwing up a shot, the ball goes in, way to shoot. Right? It was one of those situations.
And John, to answer your question that you asked, that Charlie answered about the press conference thing, I knew Coach Crean when he came from Marquette. And I knew how special he thought Indiana would be for him. So when he's out, and it's a meme now. It's a soundbite, his saying it's Indiana and him repeating that over and over and over. He was sincere about it at the time. He thought it was a special place. He wanted to be a part of that tradition. He wanted to be the guy that turned it around, and he did in some regards. It just couldn't keep it consistent. But you don't really. Do we need Coach Woodson to win the press conference? I mean.
No, I think that's one of the most overrated things in college, and maybe not even just college sports, but sports in general, is hiring somebody that's just going to get people excited during the press conference, and then you don't hear anything important or of substance between now and next season.
But I don't mind him walking.
Which I don't think will happen.
I don't mind him walking out of the press conference acting like he owns Assembly Hall, because that's the kind of swag I think you need to have to bring some of this stuff back. That there's a picture of him that I saw on social media today. I don't know if it's current or when Coach Knight was back in the building, of that jacket he has with the banners in the back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could wear that. Now that might be winning the press conference.
Is that the red jacket?
Yeah, but with the banners on the back.
That was Coach Knight when Coach Knight came.
Okay. Then was there? Then somebody had made a comment. There was something on. Again, I read on social media last night saying that Woody was always the best dressed player on the team at the time, and
that's funny.
Of course that was the late '80s or the late '70s, early '80s. That could have been just about anything back then.
That's funny.
John's not old enough to know what we're talking about, probably. But
right. No, I'm 23. The earliest basketball memory I have was the beginning of Crean. Actually, was whenever I first started paying attention to basketball. So I've seen the worst.
Go back and find that picture of the '76 team where they're all wearing like leisure suits and they look like they're doing a slow motion walk on a motion picture. And that's those guys are required. Now everybody's wearing sweatsuits and got their AirPods in their ear, which I can't complain as I'm sitting here with AirPods in my ear. But,
I am.
I like that. What I've liked a little bit is that it says the guy who doesn't think he needs to win the press conference is that Woodson, I think, has always had a little swag to his game. Even as a coach, he's not been very outspoken as a coach. Like, he's not a very loud individual, at least not from what I've heard. But definitely has confidence in what he's doing, and you got to be if you're going to get to that level. So,
especially with the way that the national media is perceiving this hire as a complete failure, whether it's Jeff Goodman or rival people like Matt Jones on Kentucky Sports Radio, they all think that this is a disaster. They think that Indiana's becoming the basketball version of Tennessee football, and it's up to Mike Woodson to show them that it's the right decision and that they're wrong.
I think
Kentucky had some missteps along the way, so Matt Jones needs to check himself because they bought their way into Calipari, and that's fine. You get guys like that every now and then, and you know, if you don't mind some of the baggage that comes along with that, and some of the reputation that comes along with that, that's super. Mm-hmm. But it's not like Kentucky. Yeah, screw that. It's not like Kentucky's had this great history of coaches that rolled out of Jim.
Get out of Jim.
You know, and that's Anyway, I don't know where else to go with that.
That's right. Well, hey, look,
and maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Everybody's like, well, okay, let's flip it. Let's don't pick on Kentucky because they take enough heat as it is, just from guys like me who think I'm a snob. But you look at Alabama, everybody's like, well, Alabama went out and got Saban. Well, they had 6 coaches in between him and Bear Bryant. So, I mean, it wasn't like they fired guys at Alabama who won, you know, after 4 or 5 years. And you know, it's not like these programs can look at UCLA. There's complete either missteps in terms of hiring or missteps in terms of firing that these organizations have. And I don't think Kentucky's in any position to talk about it, especially the way they run some guys off. And you know, they've finally got somebody who could sustain a little bit. And, you know, that goes back to, I was gonna interject something that Charlie said, Calipari, about what Woodson can tell recruits. I mean, Calipari walks into a kid's room and says, look, we only recruit guys we think can play in the NBA.
Well,
he might mean it, but that's the biggest line of BS. I mean, hell, I could say that to any kid that I'm recruiting for my team. And if I'm wrong, I could just blame them. You know, right now, Calipari is like, yeah, right now our kids don't have it. I'm like, well, those are the same dudes you recruited. So something's going on.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's been so, for a program like Kentucky, I think it's been such the expectation year over year to have players that can sustain and play. And that you can say, I mean, because again, I'm going also off of football. I grew up in Miami. I grew up a rock throw away from University of Miami. I grew up where you can go out there and watch them practice anytime you wanted to. And I say this to say this because a lot of those guys didn't have to leave the state. They didn't have to recruit outside. This is going back to like the 80s. I mean, they were just winning. They were independent. They play against Oklahoma, play against Notre Dame, they win a championship. And I was like, how? There was no conference. But my point is, a lot of those guys end up being NFL players. So it's easy to say, hey, you come here, you're going to go there. Even on Coach Calipari's website, I mean, he touts the annual contracts or the contracts of all players that have played here. It's over $1 billion, right? Now, I say that to say you can walk in and say, hey, my guys don't have it now. We are based upon what you were getting before, right? Nothing against it. It's just that you might be down on talent, like you talking about, John. This might be down on talent, right? The player piece may not be there this year, or like it has been in the years before.
Well, it's tough to do what they're doing year in, year out, and as well as with the G League taking again, the G League's going to carve some of this away. They're going to fight for the lower players in the rung,
right?
Kentucky, I mean, the Blue Bloods are still going to fight for the top players, and hopefully Indiana can get back to that point to where they're competing for not just guys like Trace, but a couple guys like Trace every year. That's been the difference. Is you could get, there would be years where Indiana would get 2 McDonald's All-Americans. I don't know if they ever got 3. There may have been a year or so where they got 3, but the G League's going to impact that aspect of it quite a bit, and I don't know that I guess we're stuck on that angle because Coach Woodson's coming straight from the NBA, but you got to be able to build a program beyond, because what John said, the era of one and done, I don't know if it's gone, but it's going to be tapered a little bit.
Right.
You got to be able to build a program that has some sustainability, and if you want an example of that, you look at Villanova and what they're capable of doing. I mean, they don't just have 3- and 4-year guys; they have 4- and 5-year guys because they redshirt kids that they expect to compete, and they do it obviously at a high level. And I would have no problem if Indiana became that type of a program but then every now and then would pull in a kid that would leave after a year or two because he is that talented, so
because he's that talented. Yeah, totally understand that.
Now, one thing that's going to be on the minds of everybody, obviously, especially as things continue to roll towards November, is what are the expectations going to be for Coach Woodson in year one? And obviously, a lot of that depends on whether he's able to retain a lot of the players, who he's able to get to stay or come back or get in the transfer portal. So it's kind of hard to tell, but what do you all think? And I'll start with you, Charlie. What do you think should be the expectations for Coach Woodson in the beginning?
Well, again, when I was in my kitchen washing dishes, he has a 6-year contract. First 2 years, no pressure. I don't see it. I just don't see. I don't see it. I don't see pressure. I see really development, relationship, recruiting, figuring out. Year 3, 4, turnaround, produce, see results of what you've done, to then probably have a talk around year 3, 4 about renewal, about whatever, right? I don't know. I don't see too much pressure off the bat. I feel, again, as a fan, they're going to talk about winning right away, as they should. But I don't really see that kind of pressure like coming in and all of a sudden now you have a 20 and 10 seasons. I don't see that.
Now to build off that though, let's just say he is able to retain everybody and he has a group experience coming back. Do you think that fans will have the expectation to be in the NCAA tournament? And if they don't, do you think the outrage will be an issue at that point at all in year one?
Well, yes. Okay. You're one game removed 2 years ago from playing in NCAA. Pandemic hit. You beat Penn State. Yep. You beat them. You were gone. Pandemic. This year, all right. Too many things in other teams' hands. This team we had to lose, win 2 more games. Win 3 more games.
Yeah.
Just win 3. I mean, do what you've been doing. We win 3 more. I feel that's the difference. Now, again, that's just me. Jim may have more insight than me. I'm more color guy. So
I don't know about insight.
3 more games. And I think you are, there may not be a banner shake, but you're in what you have not been in and what a lot of players have experienced. And for 4 or 5 plus years.
Two things. I think if they bring everybody back except Durham, maybe Geronimo, who as much as a prospect as I would hate to see him leave, but he didn't really contribute. Well, maybe contributed to a win, but not winning on a regular basis. Just certainly a good prospect, though. I think if they return everybody back, including a healthy Brunk, I think they do make the tournament. I think if they had a healthy Brunk this year, they would have made the tournament. That size, that lack of size has a ripple effect physically on the kids at other positions.
That's right.
But I think the other thing that's a little bit more superficial is if they scored 10 more points a game and still had the same record, or still had a record where they were slipping into the NCAA tournament, I think people would be monumentally happy because we all like more offense. We all like for that side of the ball to look smooth. If they, what did they end up? If they lost their last 6, if they win 3 of those games, they probably get in.
They get in.
Hell, Miller probably doesn't even get fired. I don't know what that final criteria was, but going 0-6 was definitely the final straw. But if they sneak in next year and they look better offensively than what they had the last 3 years, especially when Coach Miller's had a chance to get his system in place, I think that people will be monumentally happy and they'll be able to build on it. They just look so handcuffed offensively this year. I thought last year they were moving more and more toward off-ball movement. We've had those discussions in the past. John, I don't know if you've heard any or some of those discussions that Charlie and I talked about, but this past year they looked handcuffed, and I don't know why. not even in terms of shooting the ball, but just in terms of movement and the types of shots they were getting. They just didn't look like a team that had any sense of offensive direction. Yeah. And I think if Woody can change that, then he'll be beloved early on. But Charlie, I don't think he can slip into fewer than a 4-year deal, though. I think once he gets through year 2, I think they got to be talking.
I hear you.
Even if it's just a year rollover, making it always a 4-year contract, because he's going to be 65 in 2 years.
63 now, right?
Yeah, so in 2 or 3 years, people are going to start using age against him, recruiting-wise. How much longer is he going to be here? Right. He can't have a contract. The joke is, for those who don't really know, that if you're a college coach, especially in football and basketball, you're basically considered a lame duck if your contract is fewer than 4 years, because that's the recruiting cycle of a kid that you're bringing a kid in presumably for 4 years. So he can't, at that age, I don't care what kind of health he's in, he can't have a contract fewer than 4 years. Dolson's got to know that, and that's got to be taken care of some way, even if it's a rollover that keeps it at 4 years every year incrementally. It's just got to be. So John, it might go back to your point where it's interesting to see who you have on staff that might look to be –
that could be a replacement after he gets to where he might be thinking retirement.
Right.
Thad?
Especially if the whole IU guy thing works out and that's something that they want to continue in the future, then you've got plenty of guys like Calbert Chaney or Michael Lewis who could fill those shoes in the future if they want to.
Yeah.
And one thing, I'm going quick. It is about 10 o'clock. I am trying to figure out how to get my phone to play the press conference, so we can hear the introduction for Mike Woodson. So we will try to get that for people to hear. It is. Here we go. Watch from start. we love doing things on the fly today here.
Are you doing all this on your phone?
No. So I'm on my computer, but I'm going to have my phone playing the press conference through the computer. Do what?
Okay. I was like, what kind of phone do you have?
No. I've got our normal setup going on. I mean, this is.
I like it.
I didn't expect to be doing this morning, but I'm having a great time doing it. So
it's Coach John today. We're on Coach John's team, man.
I know. What are the odds that the first time I'll be thrown to the Wolves is on the day after a Indiana basketball coach gets hired?
Hey, man, and way to make an announcement during the NCAA tournament.
Make headlines.
The women's. At least they waited. Did they wait a day for the women's team to win and celebrate?
Okay.
The men's
Here we go.
program
Here we go.
in Bloomington, Indiana is in need of a rebirth, and they believe they have found their man. Mike Woodson is about to be introduced as the new head coach of the Hoosiers, and when he steps to the podium, we will take you out there live here on the Big Ten Network. Hi there from Chicago. I'm Mike Hall. Glad to have you with us on this historic.
While they're setting up before they get to the press conference, I'll step away and I'll keep an eye on it. And when they get to the actual announcement, we'll turn it back on, and I will turn it down because you told me it was a little loud. So thanks for letting me know that.
Yeah, slightly. All good.
Are we allowed?
Here we go. Scott Dolson is at the podium, so here we go.
San Antonio, and just couldn't be more thrilled, more proud
Sound good?
of the team. When we made the decision to make a change in men's basketball, it was the same day as the women's selection show, and I went to the selection program with our team, and I talked to Coach Moore, and I apologized to her because I did not want this selection process to take anything away from the great things that are happening with women's basketball. And she's just been fantastic, and just can't thank her enough. We've stayed in close contact. In fact, she set up a Zoom call for me to talk to the team this past Friday night before the Sweet 16 game, which I told Heidi, my wife, afterwards was so incredible. And Coach Moore thanked me, but it was more meaningful to me, I think, than it was for the team. And so, I know Hoosier Nation's down in San Antonio. I just want our women's team to know how much we're behind them and ready for the game tonight. Also, before I talk about the great news today with our men's program, I do want to say some special thank yous. This is really important to me, that I thank some special people that are really invaluable in this process. I want to start with President McRobbie. President McRobbie has just been incredibly supportive. Just can't thank him enough. I know he's got a million things on his plate. He answered every call I had throughout this last 2 weeks and made me feel like I was his number one priority. And as always, asked incredible questions. And just the collaborative process with him was terrific. And just want to thank him so much for his support. I want to thank the Board of Trustees, in particular Quinn Buckner. Quinn and I go way back. Quinn, I utilized as a liaison in this process. Quinn and I, we talk about being mission driven, and we were mission driven on several other projects we've had, and we were mission driven on this project. And I can just say this: I'm a better leader for having the opportunity to work so closely with Quinn Buckner, and I just want him to know how much I appreciate that. I want to thank my wife Heidi. Heidi, part of this process, I hold myself up in the basement of our house, and she brought meals down to me regularly, and would always say that when this is over, you don't think this is going to continue. This is it for the wait service. But she was my rock, and I appreciate that. And just thank my kids as well. We've got 5 kids, and not one single. We had 3 birthdays during this process of the 5 kids. They all go from 21 up to 28. And not one time did any of our kids ask me one question about any candidate or who's on the list. And even our youngest, who's a junior here at IU, that just impressed me so much that they just get it, and they just want to be supportive, and they love IU like we do, and just want them. There's 2 members of our senior administrative. All of our senior administrative team and athletics have been huge, but 2 members are particularly single out: Deputy AD Stephen Harper and Senior Associate AD for Sport Administration Becky Panny, who throughout this process just worked tirelessly the last 2 weeks and actually before that. And I hate to highlight them because I don't want anybody to try to steal them from us, but they've been fantastic. And then there's others, and but Maddie White, our Deputy AD, who's down in San Antonio, holding down the fort with women's basketball. Lorian Price, who's our Senior Associate AD for Academics, who's been incredible in this transition process in leading the transition team. And then finally, we created a vision document. And this whole thing today is about the vision for IU basketball, the future. And after we made the change, we created a document that really spelled out that vision. And we had 2 staff members, Allie Ricker and John Decker, who were actually on vacation. And while they're on vacation, worked tirelessly for 2 days to turn around a document that was a vision that we created that would have taken a month at least. And, again, I just tell you that because it's all about team. And that's the theme you're going to hear the more I talk today. I didn't use a search committee, as you know, but I relied on just so many experts that I talked to, experts in the NBA, from owners to general managers to scouts, experts in college, coaches, athletic directors, commissioners, and they know who they are. And there's some names, and I'll keep that confidential out of respect for them and the process, but they know who they are, and I just want them to know. I just can't thank them enough for the time they took to really help me walk through this process and do the deep dive and due diligence that I wanted to do. And there's some names on there that would probably surprise people how much time they put in. The NBA trade deadline was going on during this process, and I had people that were so heavily involved in that, but took literally large amounts of time to help me through this process and give me great advice. I want to mention Fred Glass and thank Fred. Fred, our former athletic director, one of my mentors, he told me from the start he did not want to know one candidate. That was our deal, but he wanted to be there to support me and sent me message after message just to support, as always. And just having him as a rock means the world to me. I want to thank our fans. Our fans are resilient, their passion, their support, and I want our fans to know that we all want the same things. And I just hope they know how much we appreciate that. I want to thank our former players and managers. I cannot tell you the support, the messages. I'm so behind in text messages right now that it's embarrassing, but I want them to know that from my deepest of my heart, I appreciate their support and their love for this program. And then finally, and most importantly, I want to thank our current players. Our current players, as I said 2 weeks ago, change is hard, and the fear of the unknown is hard. But our former players handled this. It couldn't have handled it better. And I'll say this: they were resilient, and they were so helpful. I had 2 Zoom meetings in the last 2 weeks with the full team and several one-off conversations, and really they helped me in this process and give me ideas of characteristics that were important to them. And I give Archie Miller a ton of credit in terms of the quality of we have, the character, and just who's in that locker room. And I just wanted our current players to know how much I appreciate that. So moving forward, the first thing I want to do is I want to welcome Thad Matta, Thad and Barbara and the girls to the program, and just quickly mention really the vision for that. And really the partnership with Thad really came about after my first meeting with Coach Woodson. Coach Woodson and I had an incredible first meeting, and we talked about the vision for the program and how to bridge the past to the future. And one of the things that he said to me, which struck me, is that he's a collaborator. One of the things that's really important to him is putting great people around him. And he says, Scott, you and I would be joined at the hip. If we do this is a partnership. And it actually was music to my ears because that's what I was looking for. Not for me to micromanage the program, but this needs to be a unified effort. And it was really, really important to him. As I moved forward in the process, and after several meetings, I realized that I'm joined at the hip with a lot of our coaches. And for me to put all my resources, although obviously basketball is so critical to us, that I needed some help. At the same time, Coach Woodson was asking me for resources around him. And so I actually came to him, went to Thad, and thought there was a perfect maybe marriage there for Thad to help me on the needs I had, to make certain I had the resources with basketball. And that Coach Woodson, he'd mentioned to me that he had a partnership with Glenn Grunwald when he was with the Knicks as the head coach. And it was incredible to have a resource to bounce things off of. And I felt like this could be a perfect fit. So it worked out great. And kind of the rest is history. But I'll say this, Mike Woodson is 100% the head coach. He reports to me and is the final decision maker based on my final approval on basketball decisions. Thad reports to me, is a key resource for me and for Thad and for Mike, and is really just can't thank him enough for being a part of our program. Having said all that, I'm excited to get to the main agenda item right now. Is that I'm just so excited to make the introduction I'm getting ready to make. I said 2 weeks ago that we're gonna build on our foundation. It was really important that we have a celebrated history, as you all know, in basketball. But the really most important thing is we have a vision for the future. And the plan was to focus on that vision for the future. So ultimately, there were 3 reasons why I ended up, which I feel to me was the perfect choice. And I can summarize it in 3. The first thing is that I feel that Coach Woodson was a perfect fit as a person. And I've talked to the people I talked to had no idea who I was leaning towards, who was in the mix, not. But I'm talking about people all across basketball, all across, to a person. They said there's no better person than Mike Woodson as a person. And that meant a lot. And the other thing they said, and I had someone really, really I respect in basketball say to me that we need someone that's a normal person, that just fits in. We need them to fit in and collaborate and be a part of a team. And I can't tell you how many people told me what Mike stood for as a person. I knew Mike, but not great. We were acquaintances with my relationship being around here. But he was the right person, and that was really important. The second thing is that, as I did my deep dive, Mike's known as a visionary. Mike's an X's and O's guy. Mike, in the NBA and circles of people that at the highest level that I talked about his visionary pick and roll defense that he started in Atlanta that became the normal way for defenses to play moving forward, for his visionary offense. This 1 in and 4 out. And I'm talking to people that weren't advocating for Mike. They had no idea where I was in the search, who talked about there's no better mind in the NBA than Mike Woodson. And it hit me as we're looking for the future. That was really, really important. And then the final piece, which is obviously the most important, is I wanted to partner someone who shared the same vision, the same passion, the same plan moving forward, because I think it's all about the plan. And it was clear that Mike was the right choice. He checked those boxes among all. So with saying all that, I just can't tell you how excited I am today, how proud I am to announce to all of you and to Hoosier Nation today, the next head basketball coach at Indiana University, Mike Woodson. Mike. Mike, we got to get your uniform back out. We'll get a little.
Thank you. Thank you. I haven't seen this in a long time. Yeah.
They said it still fits. Perfect.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Before I even open the floor up for questions, there are so many people that I want to acknowledge for me today. Coach Bob Knight, who means so much to Indiana basketball. And he took a chance on a kid out of Indianapolis many years ago to come here and play basketball. And it was a journey for Mike Woodson. And coming to Indiana University to play basketball, he taught me how to play the game of basketball from a fundamental standpoint. He taught me how to be a man on and off the floor. And that was huge for me coming out of the inner cities of Indianapolis. So I paid tribute to Coach Knight in the utmost way because Indiana basketball will always be Bob Knight. Will always be. It was great that he came back in February a year ago, and all the ex-players that surrounded him, the fans. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, Karen, Coach, I love you guys, and for me, this is a complete circle. You know, I've done pretty much everything that I wanted to do in basketball. I've never dreamed of playing, professionally. You don't go in to college, particularly at that particular time, that you're thinking that you're going to play professional basketball. And I was just trying to get an education, which I promised my mother and my sisters and brothers. And I got that and was able to get drafted in the NBA, and fortunate enough to have played 11 years. So it all worked hand in hand in making my decision to come to Indiana University. And then I got into this crazy game of coaching. And, you know, I have a lot of people to thank for that. Cotton Fitzsimmons, who was one of my early mentors in my early days as a pro player, was the guy who summoned me to come to Phoenix and start coaching. And from that day on, it took off for me. The juices started to flow. And I just felt, after I left the game of playing, I had something to offer some young kid as a coach, on and off the floor, because I like to think the years that I played here at Indiana University, Coach Knight did something right, because I turned out just fine. So in that regard, I felt I had something to give back. And I was able to do that over the years of coaching. You know, I assistant coach for about 8 years, and then I got my big break as a head coach after winning an NBA title with the great Larry Brown in Detroit. So, you know, it's been a nice run in the NBA, but to be able to circle back and come back home and coach Indiana University basketball means a great deal to me. You know, it's never been about me as a person. You know, I do what I do because I have a beautiful wife and 2 daughters who allowed me over the years to do what I do. And Terry, Alexis, Mariah, unbelievable people. I mean, they're the rock that I stand on. So for me to come back here, to be in front of all my fans and family and friends, I mean, it's amazing. You know, I never dreamt that this would ever happen to me, but I'm here, and I have so many other people to thank. President McRobbie, Scott for taking the time to fly. I know he called me and said he wanted to speak with me, and he wanted to do a Zoom. And I told him, I said, if you're interested in Mike Woodson, either I get on a plane or you get on a plane and you come see me. And he said, I'll be there tomorrow morning, the next day. So it was, I thought, a great interview in terms of getting to know one another. Didn't know if I was going to get the job, but I felt good about my position and what I had presented in terms of helping to move the needle here at Indiana University. So, Scott, I thank you for making that trip. There are people here today that I like to thank before we get really into this, and that's my family members that are here. Scott, Quinn, can't say enough, brother. You know, you guys have been in my corner for many, many years, and I thank you. Wayne Jr. Rafford is here today. And I know his dad is very happy today. Wayne, thanks for coming, brother. I want to thank my Knicks family for allowing me to get out of my contract and come home. You know, Jim Dolan gets a bad rap in New York, but he was a great owner for me. He allowed me to head coach and he allowed me to come back and be an assistant. I have him to thank, Leon, Wes, Scott Perry, and Tom Thibodeau. What a great coach. His beautiful staff that they've assembled in New York has allowed me to do what I do now and be able to come back and be a coach here at Indiana University. They didn't have to do that, but they. So I thank them very much from the bottom of my heart. Miss D and all the front office and medical and trainers, everybody in that Knick organization is first class. And I have them to thank for me standing here today. So thank you. I'd like to thank the Ferguson family, Steve, Connie, and Matt, and his whole family, because he's been a major mentor in my life. The Cook family, Bill was no longer with us, known him for very many years. And he was one of my early mentors, he and Gail Cook and Carl. Just a beautiful family. Nitra House, I know you, if you're listening, boy, you were very instrumental in me getting through school. Want to thank you. Nancy Cross, who lives here in town. I know she's happy that I'm back.
Yep.
Bob Hamill. We go a long way back.
That's right.
I said I wasn't going to get sensitive to all this.
We'll talk about her.
This is a great day for Mike Woodson and his family.
Okay.
And it's a great day for the fans
Derek's
and
mom.
Derek's mom.
Nation.
I know Derek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's going to be my job to bridge the gap between young people who don't know who Coach Woodson is and the old timers that do know who I am. And I'm going to bring all the old timers back like the old days, and we're going to bridge the gap between old and new.
Told you. I knew it.
And at the end of the day, it's about two people or two things, and that's the fans and our basketball program and our players. Our players will be first and foremost. I spoke to the guys last night, and I think they understand who Coach Woodson is early on, because I've told them that this whole program is going to be about family. And being about family, there's a lot of things that comes with that. You know, they are looking for me to get them where they need to go, and I'm looking at them to get Indiana basketball where it needs to go. And that's going to be huge, because I'm a coach that push and grab, and I try to get the most out of my players.
He's going to be on the court.
That word accountability is so important when you look at players and you talk about coaching. So I'm going to meet with each player individually today and kind of see where their heart and mind are, and talk about moving this program in the right direction, and that's getting it back on top. That's why I'm here. I'm excited about being here. Scott, you just have no idea. This is a wonderful. So with that being said, and I'm sure I've missed some people that I need to thank, but yeah, they know who they are. I appreciate all the support I've gotten over the years. And all the old timers, the ex-players that played here. Hey, I've gotten a lot of phone calls from you guys reaching out, and trust me, when time comes, I'll return the calls, but I appreciate the support. I really do. So with that being said, I will open the floor up for questions. So here we go.
My question is Rick Bozich.
Yeah, hi, Mike. How long has it been your goal to be the coach at IU, and what do you think the biggest challenges are that face?
Well, it's always been my goal. When I was doing my thing in the NBA as a head coach, I think the timing when the jobs opened up here were not in my favor because I had a job, and I never really tried to pursue it, but one time, and I didn't get the job, and so I went on back to my NBA world, and that's where I remained until yesterday, and when Jim Dolan gave me the opportunity to get on a plane and come here for the job. But I've watched Indiana basketball all my life from afar, even though the 30 years that I've spent plus in the NBA, I was always glued to Indiana basketball, and that would never change. I mean, it's a big part of my life. So, we had our ups and downs over the years. I get that, but I've always been true to Indiana basketball. So to be able to circle back and give it another shot and trying to come back as the head coach, this time I was able to get it done.
Bob Kravitz.
Yeah, Mike, welcome home. Excuse the echo. The one concern is your lack of college basketball experience. How do you plan to bridge the gap there?
This is
Hey, you all let me know when you want to come back,
sorry,
and we can leave this to
understand
time.
I understand. Is there anything we can do?
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
The lack
Can that be fixed with college? Come in a little bit clearer. And if you can understand it, maybe you can repeat the question. That'd be great.
What do you think he said? Are you concerned about your lack of college experience?
Oh, there goes Charlie.
Not at all.
Uh-oh.
Basketball to me is basketball. Sure, I've never coached in college, but I like to think that I've coached at the highest level. And I've coached players that's ever graced the basketball world. The NBA family is a beautiful thing, guys. I mean, and I've been fortunate enough to be a part of that for 30 plus years. So, yes, there are going to be some challenges, me coming back here to coach this great university and this basketball team. But at the end of the day, coaching is coaching. I got to get players, go out and recruit quality student athletes that can come in here and help this program move in the right direction. And I got to groom these young men to be men on and off the floor. That's what it's all about. Somebody took a chance, like I said earlier, on me, and I turned out just fine. So there will be challenges, but I'm going to try to surround myself with people that can help me navigate some of the challenges. But at the end of the day, I got to put a product on the floor that Hoosier fans will love from a defensive standpoint and from an offensive standpoint in terms of winning basketball games. I mean, I got to teach and develop players. That's the only way it's going to get done in terms of building a program to win.
That's it.
Coach, this is from Jeff Rab-Johns. You mentioned bridging the gap. This will be the first time that if you were talking to a prospect right now, what would your message be?
Well, again, it wouldn't be my first time recruiting in college. We recruit all the time in the NBA. The 1 year I coached the Atlanta Hawks, when I was given that job, I had the youngest team in the history of the game, and they were all recruits from the college game, where you had to go out and do background checks, medical checks. I mean, all kind of things in terms of bringing a player in that you think that can help build your program. So, we're not new to recruiting, free agency. You got to go out and recruit. But we're recruiting younger people now, and I get that. And, I remember when Coach came in to recruit me, all those things come into play. I've been far removed from it, but I honestly believe I go in a kid's home and be able to relate because of what I've gone through in my career.
That's the key.
And I have a story to tell, I do. And if that kid's willing to listen and he buys into my story, I think I can get him to come to Indiana University. So, recruiting is hard because you got a lot of coaches out there trying to recruit and the best talent to help their respective teams win basketball games. Well, I'm going to be in that same pool, and I'm going to go out and try to do it the right way. And we'll do it the right way, and we'll win the right way once I get quality kids here that I think can help us win basketball games.
Oh, Jim's calling me. Well, let me step aside real quick. Y'all go and discuss.
All right.
Hey, Jim.
Charlie, what do you think the biggest difference between being a college coach and an NBA coach? I thought two things that came to mind specifically. One is obviously the recruiting, which became forefront.
Right.
But the other one, too, is practice structure.
Yeah.
You get a more regular practice structure at the college level. The NBA level is more like what? Walkthroughs.
Yeah. And
you got to understand.
Earlier. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. And they got to know how to structure that. Not just skill development, but in terms of, maintaining your system and adding on to it, because these guys aren't professionals. They have school, they have classes, they don't get extra sessions, they have controlled hours. But then the recruiting versus free agency thing, I think he's right in terms of how you talk, how you convince those people to come to your program. But I think recruiting is more challenging because you've got the ability to recognize just from a bigger pool the players that you have. It's just a much bigger pool to deal from than NBA free agency is. But
of course, yeah.
But that's why you get experienced guys on staff and things like that. So
yeah.
I don't doubt that he'll be able to get to that. He's not going to walk into that situation blindly. So.
Well, and I just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying and complimenting it. I think he'll be able to sell his story.
Absolutely.
His story. Like, again, and I think he's already telling us what he might be going off of until you get more experiences. Hey, look at me. I'm from inner city Indianapolis. I didn't have NBA in my mind. But yeah, he's kind of telling you what he may be seeing in the homes of young men who are looking to come and be a part of the Hoosier family.
I'm almost as happy he's a Marion County guy than I am that he's an IU guy.
Right.
Just based on the conversations we had last week where I'm like, I don't need the IU tag next to his name.
Right.
I'm excited he's a Marion County guy because of the talent this area produces.
There you go.
Obviously, it won't just be Marion County kids, but it'll be Central Indiana kids, which there's just a ton of talent that comes through here on a yearly basis. And it would be nice to see Indiana. Trey Lyles probably goes to Indiana if Mike Woodson's the head coach at Indiana.
Yeah, understood.
Hey, guys. Power outage of all these great times. I have a power outage. Took everything, kicked all my alarms off and everything else. So that's a great timing. But exciting stuff going on. I know I've missed a lot of it, but I think that the more I thought about it, I like the hire. I think it just is going to bring a lot of good things to it. I've missed a lot of it, like I said, what you guys have talked about and what you all have talked about. So I'm going to try to catch up on that. So you guys keep going.
I'm pleased.
Go ahead. Y'all keep going with what you were doing.
I didn't think Mike needed to win the press conference, but I thought he did an outstanding job of winning the press conference. I mean, he's got some emotional ties to the position that I think are genuine and sincere. And, he's saying things, I think one thing, Charlie, I've been able to relay that I know a lot of guys that have played there. I know a lot of guys that have coached there. I've got couple of my own stories that we can chit chat about, casually. But some of the stuff he's talking about up there are things that only you and like guys like you can know, and certainly a guy like him can know. Just the day-to-day experience, not just with the basketball people, but with the behind-the-scenes people. Like he mentioned Cross. I didn't know that was Derek's mom.
Man, and I've known Nancy Cross.
Yeah, I've known Derek for 15, 20 years.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'll share with you the connection with Nancy Cross, Mrs. Cross. She worked at the IU Credit Union, but also as a young African American Black kid coming from the cities of wherever, that was the go-to because it wasn't many Black people around the program. So Nancy Cross happens to be Derek Cross's mom, and she worked for years. So when he mentioned that, I was like, wow, yeah.
So is that just like, is she helping you guys with business connections, like internships or?
Not even. Just more so. I mean, to be honest with you, just being around. I mean, just as a person. Right, just being around. I mean, and you don't. And again, for me, I didn't understand that when I was 17. I didn't get that. I didn't see color. No, I didn't get that. I got it later. Oh, I see now. Right, even with the late great Dr. Wiggins, right, who's passed away. He was a professor. Dr. Wiggins was an instrumental piece to a lot of people like myself. Being around, right? Bob Hamill, we all know Bob Hamill, right? I mean, Bob, that's Coach Knight's right-hand man from McComas, right? But you just mentioned those names. I was like, wow, I got goosebumps. Like, oh man, like Mike went through some of the same things I went through, right? So it's a testament to bridging the gap. I love that as a theme, bridging the gap, right? And again, he didn't have to win the press conference, but I felt he said all the things. He said he came in and said all the things. I know as a former player, I'm sitting there like, oh man, like wow, like man, I'm so excited about what's to come and what these young men are going to experience. I
was pleased that he went after it earlier. Because it just tells you that he's thinking about, hey, I want to go in that direction.
That's the vision. He thought the vision, right? If he's known for that.
No, I meant like I was pleased that he went after the position.
Yes, sir.
Earlier, like he didn't say which hire if it was Sampson or Dave. He didn't clarify, which he doesn't need to clarify.
Yeah.
But this wasn't just something that necessarily fell in his lap. Might have this time. He might have been flattered by the phone call, and it ended up leading to something bigger than that. But I was pleased that at some point he has kept an eye on this position. And this is where he wants to be.
I got an idea.
This is something that just came around.
I got an idea when it happened. We can keep that. I got an idea when it happened.
All right.
Hey Jim, I told you both Jims. I called Mike Woodson as a coach, so I got this idea as to when it happened. He wasn't ready for it.
Then you don't think? Yeah, I don't.
He wasn't ready for it, and yet I think they decided if we could read between the lines and say, you know what, let's just kind of keep things calm. What we already have, and let's upgrade somebody, and we'll just go from there. And he just happened to win or go to the NCAA championship around that time. I just felt that kind of probably when they wanted to look at that situation. Just throwing out situations.
Kind of narrowed it down there, aren't you?
And I'm not looking to definitely not looking to stir anything up, but they really wanted Thad Matta to be the head coach. And it turns out he's just not physically capable to stand all the rigors that it takes. And that's what it is. But what they've ended up doing now, with that coming around, I think that's a good idea. I think that's going to be, I mean, why not use the guy's got a ton of knowledge. He's got a ton of ability. He just can't physically do everything that comes with it. That doesn't mean he can't do a lot of things that's going to be valuable.
Put him in a position to win. That's right.
Especially with someone like Mike Woodson, who does not have the college experience, the college know-how, the college game. You guys know is the college game and the NBA game are just different. It's how you approach them. It's different, I think, and I think he's going to need some help with that, his attack, and all of that. But I'm sure there's other things that he's going to be a great value to, and Jim knows that as more than any of us.
Well, Jim brought this up, and I want to just kind of Jim expand on this point, but practice, because again, I mean, let's face it, 82 games. It's more about an 80-20 to me. 80% games, 20% practice, walkthroughs, shoot-arounds, individual shots at a 5% snail pace. Being real with you, guys are out. They need more rehab, prehab. So now practice structuring, practice planning, development, building blocks, all-season work, development, interviews with players, getting people better. That's where I feel the most help is going to be needed. Not saying he's going to do it on his own, but to have the pieces that really understand how to develop in those areas. I think that's going to be something that's going to be a major adjustment, I feel, that I think he's open to, and having someone like Thad Matta being around to probably assist with as well.
Absolutely. And
building too.
Jim, talking about recruiting, you're closer to the high school players. I think that was a fear of people of bringing in a Mike Woodson, because they don't know who he is. The dads do, but the kids don't know. But I think that there's a lot of ways to overcome that now. But that's definitely a question that people are going to ask.
Well, when you consider how high up the ladder, the food chain that we think Indiana is, there's a chance that anybody they bring in that isn't already a known quantity is going to have that same identity issue. And so you still have to build relationships no matter who you get in that job. But I want to go back to the practice part of it. And Jim, I'll circle back to the recruiting too, if I didn't give a specific enough answer. But the practice side of it is understanding the time you've got to build your system, the time you've got to tweak it, how you break it down, how you build it back up. It's going to take more than, because at the professional level, you can have a level of expectation where you tell these guys you're expected to know this when you roll in the door. No different than being a football team and understanding the playbook or under certain aspects of the playbook. But at college, you definitely got to build it, and it's so many off-season workouts, so much of that stuff that they don't have. The NBA, people think it's just freedom and all that stuff. The NBA has a definite timeline as to when these coaches can work with their players. And, in college, it's a little, in some ways it's looser in the off season, especially in the summer. So, Woody, whoever, and his staff, in his case, he's just going to have to learn that the practice process is part of the grind and is not just something you do on a day off.
Right.
And I think he knows that. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah, of course.
That's not going to be news to him. The question that is definitely not going to be news to him. The question will be is how does he, is he going to be, is that transition smooth? So
yeah,
I think the recruiting part of it, Charlie and I talked on that before you got in here, Jim, was the issue. He compared it to NBA free agency, which in terms of convincing people to come join your program, he's right. You're building relationships. You're convincing them what your franchise or your program is going to be like. But recruiting for college, you're dealing with such a broader pool that you have to really have systems in place of people you trust that can help you identify those prospects, which is why, you've got guys assistants that come in that recruit certain parts of the country or recruit certain situations, and you've got a recruiting coordinator. And it's not why all these programs, it's why you see like stretches where Kansas will end up getting a run of kids from Texas because they've got a guy on their staff who recruits Texas really well. None of these programs are truly nationwide all the time, with maybe a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, they come in with regional connections. And every now and then they swing for the fence, especially if they're good. If Indiana can get back with their competing for the Big Ten, they will. The championship every year, they will have a level of recognition that will take them in pretty much any living room. And but for the most part, it's just going to be recruiting regionally the best players and identifying who those players are.
Yep.
It sounds like the old Bob Knight recipe back in the early days of Bob Knight.
Well, it was Indiana, it was Chicago, and it was Ohio. And then we get a kid from Florida. Some of us didn't know, and then you start to see things on him, you like him, and every now and then night would get a kid from somewhere else. And who recruited
California?
you? Charlie. Yeah.
Who recruited? Coach Ron Felling.
Felling. Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh, that's odd.
Actually, and he didn't see me in Florida. He saw me in Las Vegas.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
He saw me in Vegas.
Yeah.
And 22nd story. I got a call. Actually, again, there's no cell phone. It was the hotel room.
Yep.
And it was, hey man, Indiana likes you. I'm like, who?
Right? Tell me when that was. That
was 1993.
So that's right when I start coming in.
It was the LVI. Remember the Las Vegas Invitational?
I started coming in after that. It was basically it was the big time, and then the Adidas and Reebok were going head to head.
Right.
When I started coaching.
LVI. And actually I was playing on the West Coast All Stars with Doug Gottlieb, Tony Gonzalez. It was Tony Gonzalez, Harold Jameson, who went to Clemson.
Before there were rules. Before there were rules.
Yeah. Before the rules.
Now you can't do that now. At least not in the
Harold Jameson. Yeah. So I mean, it was West Coast All Stars. Like So anyway,
and back then the coaches could communicate with the kids directly.
Right.
Then it became. That's why I wanted to know, because what I was going to say was around late 90s, early 2000s, it became the coaches could communicate with us directly,
right,
but not the kids.
Not players.
And then it became, we're going to hand you a business card. We're going to hand you a note. I turned into a mailman for about 5 summers, and ended up, you get kids that get recruited a little bit more heavily than others. So you end up having these private meetings.
Right.
Because you don't want to give some kid. I remember coaching Dominic James from Richmond. I remember giving him 20 or 30 envelopes, business cards at a time, and one other kid would have one.
One, right? And
you start finding secret ways to do it to where you're not, you're not, unintentionally embarrassing a kid because he doesn't get, maybe 1 or 2 or maybe none, because it's. A lot of those kids are still recruited by programs that recruit year to year. So, but it's just so much. I like it. I kind of like it better now because I don't have to. I can just deal with my team.
That's right.
But it was, it was flattering. They liked our kids, and it's. But there are times where it was kind of insane and hectic, and so luckily, a guy like Coach Woodson doesn't have to deal with that.
I feel this too. Now, if you remember, Jim, and both, when I was in college, remember there was like the 8-hour-a-week rule in the summer. That means, and also, so what I'm saying, listeners, is you can only work with players for 8 hours, but you also could not work with the whole team. So you can do as much as a small group workout. So it can only be 3 players at a time. And
this is off season. This is off season.
Yeah. Now, and I believe that happened about 7-8 plus years ago. Now your whole team can practice so many hours now. So I think that's the full advantage you have to implement your defensive systems from the individual standpoint to the small group to the whole team coming together, whole method, right? Like what Coach Knight was known for.
Yeah, it's 2 hours per kid, per player. So what a lot of them will do is they will do 2 30-minute workouts,
right,
and then they will have an hour practice.
Right.
Now that's just with basketballs. That is not a conditioning, weight training.
Correct.
That's additional.
Correct. Just saying together as a group.
Yeah, I like that because again, that gets me going to college stuff in September. So I dig that. I like going in there, finding some good new ways to pick up drills.
That's right.
So,
well, I know Jim's got to get going today, and Charlie's got a lot of things that he's got to do as well. So I missed most of the good stuff, man. I hate it, but I will be back to do it again tomorrow. But we're looking forward to possibly doing something tonight, a special show, putting that together with John Leskowski, Joe Hillman, and others like we did last week. We'll talk about that. I may end up having Charlie on. I don't know what his schedule is, but we're going to talk to some other people. But Jim, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Filling in big, and of course Charlie as well. But man, I hope you guys go out and have a great day. Enjoy the hire and the talk that's going to be coming around for the rest of the week, because it's going to be something that we get to talk about.
And give John big kudos for taking over. I joined in thinking Charlie was doing a monologue, and it was actually a really good conversation. I stumbled in.
Like that. Thank you, Jim. I raised the roof on that one, man. Appreciate you.
Hey, man, that's why I got John on, man. That's why I brought him along. And I didn't expect him to have to jump in this soon. But that's one of the first things I told him is like, man, I haven't had a break in 3 years, and this of all time, this week is just killing me. And so I'm like, well, I need someone like you. I didn't think I was going to need him as soon, but great to have him, and great to have all you guys. And we're going to continue to cover this all throughout the day and back tomorrow. But I think a special tonight. Look forward to that. We'll get that out. But thanks to you guys and everybody. Wear your mask. Go out and do something nice for somebody. Until tonight, Jim Coyle, I will see you on the radio.